know I can't do this on my own. It's lonely in the cold, yet even through the rain, the sun gives light to a brighter day. And as the seasons change, I'll find a way with grace to a hope that lasts forever, and put the pieces together.
Good morning and welcome once again to Putting the Pieces Together, brought to you by Linwood Community Church. I'm your host, Lefty Olguin, and it is a beautiful morning. Overcast, cold, but it's a beautiful morning to stay inside, and that's exactly where I'm at right now. Let's open in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to share your word, share some thoughts, share some stories, and Lord, we come to you today with a heavy heart. Country's in disarray. We have disease rampant and hate being just permeating in our country, Lord. And we just ask you to take us to that peaceful place, Lord, to focus on you, to open your word, to read, to understand that everything that we need to know is in your word. We don't need to make it up. We don't need to write a book about our thoughts, our theories. We just need to open the book, read, and pray for your guidance. And so I do that today, and I just ask you to open minds and open hearts. We ask in your name. Amen. Well, because we're in such disarray, and I wanted to touch on a couple points, bring a couple names forward, maybe add a little levity to today. And the title of today is, Are There Any Heroes Left Today? Well, I think there are. And first of all, let me give you a definition. I looked on the internet and pulled a couple of definitions of what a hero is. And a hero is defined on the internet as a well-known person, respected, admired, supposed to be exalted after death, to place among the gods, a demigod like Hercules, the thought that came out of the internet. But a hero is a man of distinguished valor, enterprise in danger, or fortitude in suffering, prominent or central personage in any remarkable action or event. So, I was always drawn to these movies growing up. I used to like mythology, Greek mythology. I mean, I never believed in it, but man, I liked the Norse gods and Thor and Hercules and the Greek gods. And I remember this one movie with Steve Reeves. It was called Hercules. And so he threw this discus in the movie, and of course he was a half god and half man, and it never came down. They couldn't find it. He threw it so far. Well, so one day I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out in my backyard, and I'm going to pretend like I'm Steve Reeves, Hercules, and I'm going to throw a 5-pound weight that I took off my barbells and see if I could throw it over the fence in my backyard and into the alley. No big deal. Thought it would work. My brothers came out, my brother Jerry and Eddie, who were actually outstanding track athletes. They both threw the discus. They both threw the shot put. And they're both telling me, don't do it. Lefty, don't do it. And I go, no, Steve Reeves could do it. I could do it. And so I got out there and tried to mimic the motion, and I didn't know how to throw a disc, let alone a 5-pound weight. And I threw it, and I thought it would clear the fence, but instead I hung on too long, and it cleared my garage and went over into my neighbor's house, and before it hit the ground, it hit the window. So I threw a 5-pound weight through my neighbor's window. But you know what? God is merciful, because my pastor came over the house and put a new window in for my neighbor. And to be really honest with you, it probably won't be the last window that he put in for me. So I had this window thing. Which brings me to another story. I think you'll like this story, to add a little levity to today, but to show you how as a teenager, I probably wasn't the brightest tool in the shed, but I was the most daring tool in the shed. Anyways, on the weekends, I was in junior high. We used to jump the elementary school fence at Leland Street School, and we'd go play softball or basketball. And we had a pretty good following. And so one day, I said, hey, let's just take a hard ball, and let's see how far we could hit that hard ball. So we jumped the fence and went down to the backstop and said, we're not going to have to hit up towards the school because it's farther. We don't want to hit it across the street and break a window. Now I'm thinking about protecting other people's windows. So I get up, and I got to tell you, man, I hit a shot. I hit the ball so far, it was mythical, to be honest with you. The ball's climbing over the bungalow, went past the bungalow, past the protective fence, and you could hear a window break. And of course, my first instinct was run, jump back over the fence, and go home. And that's exactly what we did. Well, a few days later, I get a knock on the door. And it's the principal from Leland Street School, Mrs. Kennedy, who was a really sweet lady. She really loved me. And she says, Lefty, we had a break-in or a broken window this last weekend, and I just wanted to know if you knew anything about that. And of course, I'm going to lie because I broke the window, and I said, no, Miss Kennedy, I really don't know anything about it. She goes, okay, well, I believe you. Oh, by the way, here's your baseball. It's got your name and address on it. And instantly, I said, oh, thank you, Miss Kennedy. Somebody stole my baseball last week, and you just got it back for me. And she knew darn well I was lying, but she never said a word, walked away. And I didn't call my pastor on that one because I probably wasn't doing the right thing. What does a broken window have to do with a hero? Absolutely nothing. I just wanted to tell you that story. So let's get back to our heroes. And let's talk a little bit about a sports hero, since I love sports and a lot of people like sports. I don't look at sports heroes as people that I worship. Never have. I looked at them as great people in sports. But there were some that impacted the world on a grander stage. It wasn't just their sport. We've had great basketball players, baseball players, football players that were great in their sport, but that was as far as it went. And then we had some people who represented a culture, represented the country on a bigger stage. For instance, Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe, Sac and Fox Indian, known as one of the greatest athletes, and actually was named the greatest athlete in the first half century. And Jim Thorpe won a gold medal in the pentathlon and the decathlon in the 1912 Olympics. A great feat that hasn't been done since. He was an all-pro for the New York Giants. He was in the NFL Hall of Fame. And he was a great representative of Native Americans. Then there's Jackie Robinson. Of course, Jackie Robinson, one of my favorites. Jackie Robinson is an African American that broke the color line in Major League Baseball. And he was not only for the Dodgers, but for actually all baseball and for people in our country and people of color. And Jackie Robinson was a six-time All-Star. He won the MVP in the National League. He was a four-time letterman at UCLA, and he was a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. So he represented his country well. And then there was a lady named Babe Didrikson Saharias. She was an American athlete of Norwegian descent. She won 41 LPGA championships in golf, and she won 10 majors. But what made her special is she won 2 gold medals in track and field and 1 silver medal in track and field at the 1932 Olympics. She was all around. She was great. She was so good that she pitched in 2 separate exhibition games for Major League Baseball. She was that talented. And of course, she was nicknamed after Babe Ruth. But you know what? To me, a hero, when I say a hero that I'm going to look at and respect for things they did, are war heroes. And so I looked up and tried to find some guys that did amazing things and represented their country. And I came up with Audie Murphy, who was an American soldier, actor, songwriter, rancher. He was one of the most decorated American combat soldiers of World War II. He had won every available medal at that time, U.S. Army, and actually got medals from France and Belgium as a war hero. And it was noted that the first Medal of Honor he got, he was 19 years old and single-handedly held off a company of Germans for an hour until his troops came. And then he led an attack when he was wounded and without ammunition. So Audie Murphy was one of the war heroes that, even though I wasn't around in World War II, he was in all the movies, and he was an actor, and he had a well-known reputation for what he did for this country. And then there's Pat Tillman. A lot of you know Pat Tillman if you're a football guy. Pat Tillman was a professional football player, and he left playing football, and he left a huge contract on the table to go fight for his country after 9/11. And he was so inspired and wanted to serve his country, so he left, and he made the news, national attention, when he was killed in action by friendly fire. We have those guys. We have the Audie Murphys, who everybody that watched movies knows who Audie Murphy is, a war hero. Everybody who, especially football, knows what Pat Tillman did and gave up to serve his country. And I want to talk about an unheralded person who you probably don't know, but I do. And his name is Rick Gonzalez. And Rick Gonzalez, and I call him Ricky, when I was growing up, he's 2 or 3 years older than me. Grew up in San Pedro. He's a San Pedro boy. And I used to watch him play football at Ferdinand Laswin High School. And he was a little undersized for a football guy, but he had a big heart. And so as I grew and as he grew, he went his ways. And I went to college. I went to play baseball, as a lot of other people at that time did during the Vietnam War. And Ricky went in and served in the United States Marine Corps. Ricky's not Audie Murphy, and Ricky's not Pat Tillman. But to me, tough to say this stuff, but to me, I love Ricky Gonzalez. I love Ricky Gonzalez because he's everything that this country is supposed to stand for. And he went and served in Vietnam. He went to serve his country. He went to serve God and country. He went to serve his town. He went to serve his family. And when I think about it, he went and served. He stood and gave his life, or would have given his life, for me. And I was just another Ricky Gonzalez fan growing up. But the tremendous amount of respect and love I have for him right now is because of the person he was and because of his faith. And it brought a verse to my head. It's John 15:13. It's famous. It's a famous verse. We use it all the time. But just let me tell you what it says. It says, "Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friend." And Jesus is saying this, and he says, you are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you to do. Well, that's a big verse, because in today's society, right now, we're not willing to lay down our life for other people. As a matter of fact, I think when you turn the news on at night, what you first see is you're not laying down your life, you're taking somebody's life. That's where we're at right now. And these soldiers, these people that went and stood for what we believed in, God and country, they were willing to lay their lives down for people they didn't know. And instead of the big thank you, they get to turn around and come home to a world, an ever-increasing world in violence and crime, and unappreciated during that war, for sure. But you know what, I looked at that and I said, okay, I love these people for what they did. I love Pops Gonzalez. And what about my Old Testament guys? You know, I always try to go back to the Old Testament. There's some great stories in the Old Testament. You heard me talk about Moses last time. But as Moses went in and following God's command, to sit in front of Pharaoh and to be used by God to work these miracles, he's a hero. He's a biblical hero. And although he's human, he's willing to go in to the den of the Egyptians and challenge the number one guy. And with God on his side, of course, Pharaoh wasn't number one guy. He was way down the list. The number one guy was over the Israelites. And but Moses, really an exciting verse for me. You know, it's a picture of, I go back to the movie of the Ten Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille did such a great job. But here's Charlton Heston, Moses, sitting on a rock, and here's what he says. And Moses said unto the people, this is Exodus 14, 13 through 14, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Sit back and see the salvation of the Lord. Wow. Love that verse. Love that movie. I love the story of Moses. Story of David. Everybody knows about David, King David. We're studying him in Bible study right now, and if you want to punch on the Bible study video, and Les goes over 1 Samuel and the story and the life of David. Now, being a sports guy, there's a terminology that's just thrown around in almost every sport now. It's called talking trash. So if you're in football and you're Deion Sanders, you know how to talk trash. If you're a boxer and you're getting somebody's face, and Muhammad Ali knows how to talk trash. Nobody can talk trash like David. Now, picture this. We all know the story of David and Goliath, but here's what comes out of the mouth of David when he's ready to fight Goliath, who is 3 times as tall, 4 times as big, loaded with armor. And what does David have? David has 5 rocks, 5 pebbles, and a slingshot, but he has God on his side, so that makes up for everything. 1 Samuel 17:46. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. No, I'm not saying this came out of his mouth, but can you think about a better way to talk trash to a giant? Is to tell him you're going to cut his head off, feed it to the birds. I thought that was great. David's an Old Testament hero. Was he perfect? Was Moses perfect? No. Reason? Nobody's perfect. So jump into the New Testament, and in the New Testament, we have a ton of heroes. And when Jesus started his ministry and recruited, basically recruited his apostles, he didn't go to a camp and try everybody out. He didn't go say, well, I'm going to try you out. I want to see who runs the fastest, throws the farthest, who's the biggest, who's the strongest. He didn't choose the cream of the crop. He chose the people that he knew were going to fulfill his purpose. And I just took three heroes, and I call them heroes because they did some amazing things and had to go through some tough times. And they were ordinary people. The Apostle Paul, the most recognized missionary through his journeys, he was not only not a person of Christ, that he wasn't one of the first 12 apostles, but he was an apostle. But he killed Christians. He was the guy that was in charge of creating all this havoc. And then when he met the Lord on the road to Damascus, life changed for him. Jesus became his Lord. And he turned around and he had to go back. And he had to preach the gospel. Now he's being one of the smartest people, the Jews, the Pharisee. He was brilliant. But he used to hate Christians. And now he's serving the Lord. So you can imagine how much heat he drew from people. And then there was John the Baptist, who wasn't one of the apostles, but John the Baptist prepared the way for Jesus Christ. And he was a little out there. I mean, if you in today's society, if you probably couldn't have John the Baptist walk into a church with his robes and all the hair on him, and it's a little different, but nonetheless, he prepared the way for Jesus. And he baptized Jesus. And then you have Peter, who was an apostle. There was 3 apostles. I call them the big 3 because they were with Jesus at critical times. They were the big 3, Peter, James, and John. Not, if you're a golfer, it wasn't Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Gary Player. The big 3 were Peter, James, and John. James and John were brothers. They call them the sons of thunder. They were fishermen. These 3 guys were fishermen. So why would God call a fisherman? Why would he call a tax collector in Matthew? Why would he call the different people that did different things, that are ordinary people? He had a purpose. He had a purpose for his ministry. So let's look back for a second at the definition I gave you for a hero. And think about the guys that I listed as heroes. A well-known person, well, of course, Audie Murphy, Pat Tillman, they were well-known. Paul and John the Baptist and Peter, they're well-known. They're heroes. Respect and admired. Of course, some of the guys we listed were respected and admired. They were exalted after death. Enterprise and danger. Fortitude and suffering. I mean, you talk about these 3 heroes in the New Testament. They suffered. They got a couple of beheadings, and supposedly one got hung upside down on a cross because he wasn't worthy to be hung like Jesus. And even though it's not in the Bible, some say that's how he died. But they're all martyred. They gave their life. They knew once they started doing what they were doing that they could have pulled out any time they wanted. But they're truly heroes. They truly suffered for the word. Prominent or a central personage in any remarkable action or event. And I look and I say, well, hey, even though Ricky wasn't recognized, he was in war. That's an event. And he went and served as an event, put his life on the line. Many of his friends didn't come back. So I want to tell you, there's only, we do have heroes. We have biblical heroes. We've got heroes and war heroes. We've got people who've done great things for countries. But we've only had one superhero. Last week talked about Jesus Christ being Superman and related him to the Man of Steel. But he's a superhero, period. Because Jesus Christ had all of these qualities. Not one, not a few. He had every one of these qualities. I want to read to you 1 John 3:16, not John 3:16, 1 John 3:16. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us, and we also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. I love these guys. They went off to war. They laid down their lives for their country. Jesus laid down his life for everybody, not just a country, for everybody, for the sinners. We're all sinners. He laid down his life for people. And he laid down his life for people that tried to kill him. And he laid down his life for people that hated him. And I know that this next week, our pastor's going to give an amazing sermon and give you some more insight to why Jesus laid down his life. And I can hardly wait for that, because I get sneak peeks from Pastor because I get a chance to talk to him. I learn just by listening and talking with him. Well, Jesus sacrificed that. But you know what? He sacrificed his life, and he didn't sacrifice it to free everybody. He just gave us a choice. We have a choice. We have an opportunity. And I think one of the greatest verses in the Bible, they're all great verses. Revelations 3:20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me." So I wanted to explain that in a short, just explain it in a short little text like this. It says, who knocks? Who's knocking at the door? When you read that verse, who's knocking at the door? Well, Jesus is knocking at the door. And I want you to understand, he doesn't knock at the door for everybody at the same time. I want to bring this back to just a personal thing between Jesus and you. Jesus and me. It's personal. My relationship with Jesus is personal. I don't belong to a group. I'm not Catholic. I'm not Baptist. I'm not Presbyterian. I go to a Bible church. I go to a non-denominational church. And the main reason is it's personal. It's a personal relationship. And this is personal for me. Jesus is the one, the exalted Christ, knocks on the door. What's the door? That door is your heart. And it's closed. Man's heart is closed until Jesus enters. Man's heart is closed. So what does he desire? He just wants to come in. He wants to come in and be a part of your life. Excuse me. So, what are the knockings? What are the knockings? And his voice. They're direct invitations. The invitation of his written and spoken word. Now stop and think for a minute. Isn't that a simple thing to do? I mean, stop and think of where we're at today, what we're asking for. People are praying for a vaccine. I'm not praying for a vaccine. I think a vaccine is going to happen. But I'm praying for people to open the door when Jesus knocks, because that's the real answer. 2 Timothy sort of lays it out for us where we are today. 2 Timothy 3:1-5. I want you to look it up. I want you to understand what this verse is saying. But know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves. Happening. They'll be lovers of money. Happening. They'll be boasters. Happening. They'll be proud. Blasphemers. Disobedient to parents. Oh, that never happens. Unthankful. Unholy. Unforgiving. Slanderers. Without self-control. Brutal. Despisers of good. Traitors. Headstrong. Haughty. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people, turn away. When I read that verse right now, it's tough to turn away, because everywhere you walk, you see this happening in your country. You see that when we let God out of our schools, we leave God out of our families, we leave God out of what we're doing, we're right in the middle of that, right in the middle. And that does sound like America today. It does sound like the rest of the world today. And the answer is in the Bible if you want it. If you're afraid to open that Bible and really search the truth, Send me your name. I'll pray for you, because that is the only way you're going to get the right answer. We put a great emphasis on our sports heroes today, and that's okay. Sports is entertainment. Okay, just don't worship or idolize a sport. And because they entertain us, it's okay. And if some actually give their time and their wealth and to people who need it, I know there's a lot of athletes out there that actually do help and support communities and kids and families. So I'm not talking to them. But you know what? Our focus should be on Christ alone. Our focus should be on Christ alone. And if your focus is on Christ alone, you're going to help that person. You might have $1 to your name, but you're going to make sure that person that's in need gets that $1. And you're going to look at the guy over here that has $800 million to his name, and he's not going to look at that person and give him $1. He's going to look down, and he's going to be one of those guys mentioned here, lovers of money. He just wants to make more money, because there's never enough. And that's not what Christ came down for. He came down to save. He came down for us. He came down to save us from sin. The bottom line is he came down to teach. He was a great teacher, but he was God. A lot of people recognize him. Well, Jesus was a great teacher. He lived on earth. He walked. We've got historical proof that he's just a great teacher. Well, forget that. He was the greatest teacher, but he was also God. Great teachers will ask a question, answer it with a question, make you think. And he was the best. And what he did is he gave you a choice. He gave you an option. If you're a football guy and you know how to run the option, your first option is to give it to your fullback. If that guy's going to be tackled, you pull it out, you run down the line. You go ahead and look at the outside linebacker, the defensive end. If he's coming at you, you pitch the ball to the tailback who's trailing, or you keep it and run upfield. That's a football option. And it's the same as a fast break option in basketball. You're Magic Johnson, and if you were Magic Johnson, you were one of the best. Coming down the court, you have a choice. There's two guys on the wing. Do I fake it, look that way? Do I throw it around my back that way? Or do I take it and I lay it up? That's option. Jesus Christ gave you an option. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. Now it's your choice. You can go to Jesus Christ or away from Jesus Christ. You can be huddled up with all these people in 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. You can stand out on your own, like our biblical heroes who gave their life and say, you know what? I'm here to serve the Lord. I'm here to make things right. And I'm going to leave you with that, because that's a positive up note, a positive beat, that there are the perfect answers out there for us. Thank you for today. We'll see you next Friday. Another message.
The beating of my heart is deafening, but I'm still listening. In the silence after the storm, your voice will bring me home. I can hear you more than ever, taking me to a place that's better, with a hope that lasts forever. I'll put the pieces together, put the pieces together, put the pieces together, together.